morning, students. In this present lecture onwards, I would like to introduce the qualitative methods. Okay, I would like to outline what is the very idea of the qualitative method is. Basically, the very idea of the qualitative method attempts to understand the life world of an individual. Basically, this is the very fundamental. Understanding the life world of an individual or a group. Okay, so how we would like to understand the life world is that we try to understand the life world through understanding the respondent's experience. Through basically it's understanding the life world through experience. So what connects the better understanding of the life world is that it's an individual experience, whether the experience of the individual or the experience of the group. Okay, basically the researcher is interested in understanding the life world, at the same time understanding the experience. So the other way around is that by understanding the experience, the researcher attempts to engage with the life world of the respondents. It may be an individual, one individual, or it may be a group. So this is what basically that overall idea of the qualitative method. Okay, so now we will be exploring in a much deeper understanding of how we can employ this method. What is this primarily the method is used for? Who is actually which discipline specifically uses this particular method? Okay, these are some of the ideas we will be exploring, and slowly we will also enter into the idea of how to enter the field. Okay, how to maintain the relations, and then how to select the samples, and what we are supposed to observe, how we are supposed to observe, and at the same time the notes taking. The note taking is very fundamental, very kind of rudimentary to this very grounding is that the notes taking. Okay, without taking notes you will not be able to do the qualitative methods. So the notes taking, at the same time how the researcher is supposed to maintain oneself within the field as well as outside of the field, so that actually we will be as the researcher we will be able to engage with the individual or the group experiences. Okay, so these are some of the things we will be engaging with this particular lecture. Okay, the first idea of what is this the qualitative method is that, number first, the very fundamental aspect is that it's, as I've said, it's the life world as well experience of an individual or the group. So how would we able to understand this, the life world experience is that by understanding the human subjectivity. By understanding the human subjectivity. What is this basically the human subjectivity, which means as a human, okay, as an individual, we used to attach different set of meanings. Different set of meanings to different set of aspects of life. For instance, we would associate a different set of meanings to a particular object or a material thing. So here the material refers to, for instance, it starts from the technology to money, which also includes, for instance, gold, ornaments and other things. At the same time, we also associate certain meanings with the places. For instance, which place, a simple question we would ask, which place do you prefer to live? Whether you want to live in a kind of a metropolitan city or the cosmopolitan city, or you want to stay in a town or a kind of a rural village. So these are the places which we try to associate certain meanings with that. At the same time, we also associate certain meanings towards certain section of the population. celebration. At the same time, we also attach certain meanings towards certain events. For instance, events in the sense certain festivals or certain ceremonies which happen within the society. So basically, when we try to understand the life world, okay, that means we are trying to understand how the formation of the human subjectivity which happens. We try to understand the human subjectivity through different set of meanings that individual associate with. Either they may be like associating with an object, or they may be associating with the places, or they may be associating with certain section of the population or certain communities, okay, or they used to associate certain meanings towards certain events like festivals, celebrations, and everything. Okay, so this is how you try to infer. You try to infer the life world experiences. Okay, so the second we move from the first idea of that understanding the life world experiences of an individual or a group. At the same time, what we are trying to do in a given social setting, any social setting, it can be in any social setting, in a given social setting. It may be a kind of a village to a nation. So any social settings, we try to ask this question. Okay, normally we try to understand what do they think? What do they think? The basic fundamental questions. At the same time, we'll also ask the basic question of how do they act? So here the they, which refers to your respondents or the subject of the study. They refers to the subject of the study. Okay. So what they think, what they act primarily, which leads to asking the question, why do they think in such a way, or why do they act, or why do they behave in such manners? So these are some of the things which we would like to interrogate or investigate in a given social setting. The given social setting, either it's from the village or from the nation state point of view, or even for instance organization. Okay, even it can be an economic organization, or it can be a kind of any social organizations. Okay, village itself a social organization. Okay, so you are trying to ask these questions that the thinking and the behaving in a given social setting. Okay. At the same time, when you interrogate, when you understand this, what you are actually trying to do is that there are two different aspects of understanding. In a given social setting, okay, so that means you are investigating what exists. This is what the question is. What exists rather than what ought to be. Always the qualitative research is much more interested in understanding what exists. What is the reality? That means translating what exists, which means what is the reality of the situation. Rather than what should be the reality of the situation. That means, as a researcher, as an investigator, we are only trying to understand what is ongoing, how the situation provides. So we are not engaged in, for instance, what should be the reality of the situation. So when I am engaged here is that what should be the reality of the situation. That means I am trying to bring a kind of change within the reality. or change within the given situation. Always the qualitative research or the qualitative researchers which they would highly focused on this aspect. But however, our purpose of this course, for instance, with reference to this particular course, is that primarily you are trying to understand what exists, what is the reality of the situations. But however, your concern is on what ought to be or what's supposed to be. So that you are trying to enhance, you are trying to improvise the given situation. The improvisation happens with the question of what ought to be. Okay, what should be the reality? How I can change the reality of the particular situation. So this is something you are moving into the field of research with the thought of bringing a change or introducing a kind of an intervention, those intervention which would bring change in the course of a time. So you are entering with this purpose, in the mind. Okay, normally, as in general, normally the researcher, the qualitative researcher, they would enter with this notion. Okay, so what is the difference here? What is difference which is coming here is that here when you are entering with this particular thinking, what ought to be, that means you have certain predetermined notion about the situation. You have a certain thinking within your mind or thought process within your mind. That thought process you are expecting to implement in the field in the due course period of a time. Okay, that means you carry certain things with the predetermined sense. At the same time, here in this context, the researcher never carries any predetermined notion. Okay, without taking those predetermined notion, he only being a part, he himself or he or she himself locates. This is the situation. As a researcher, he situates he situates himself or herself within the situation and comes to understand the situation alone. That's it. He is not going to disturb. He's not going to disturb the social order. Okay, but on the other hand, as the purpose of this particular course is to bring a kind of a change within the even it can be a change in terms of the technological order of the society. Okay, but always you enter, rather I don't deny that you're not supposed to keep the predetermined thinking or predetermined thoughts about the change which you want to bring to your investigation. Rather, I always tell you that you keep this aside, you keep the notion aside, and you just general in a way of a more kind of as a kind of a researcher, as a kind of a sociologist or a kind of a social anthropologist, the way they try to investigate a certain community or certain villages. So you enter like them. Okay, understand as much as possible. So by understanding as much as possible, and you think how the life world is. When you are supposed to think what is the life world of the respondent, you will be able to associate yourself with, I just put it, this experience in the form of how much the emotional content is. How much the emotional content of the life world is. So when you understand the emotional content of the life world, what you're trying to understand here is that what is the pain? What is the suffering? What is the pain? What is the suffering? Okay, what is their notion? What is their notion of the life world is all about? The notion of the life is all about. So you will be better experiencing yourself as a participant, as being part of that society. That's what the very intention of the qualitative method is. Okay, the very intention of the qualitative method is you are experiencing the same experience of your respondent. As a researcher, you are experiencing the same experience of your respondent. Okay, there is no difference between the respondent's experience and your experience. Okay, so that means because you are participating in the social process of life. Okay, that's why always this qualitative methods which would take, for instance, more than, I would say, a minimum of 1 year, maximum of 10 years to do a particular project, because they are trying to understand this. They are particularly trying to understand the emotional, or even, for instance, the other side of the life. For instance, simply, a good example. Yeah, good example of this. Okay, I just give an example of this. For instance, the availability of drinking water. The availability of drinking water. For instance, in a community, in a locality, where there is no availability of the pure drinking water. How this non-availability of the pure drinking water, which would lead to kill the girls' education. So, for instance, the most of the time, the women is considered as a labor. Women is considered as a labor. They used to walk. For instance, a village doesn't have a pure drinking water, then they will be trying to walk at least a minimum, for instance, in Indian context, minimum of 2 to 3 kilometers per day to bring a kind of one bucket of water. Okay, so for 1 or 2 buckets of water. So what they do is that when they are engaged in the household activities, then the education is denied. Then they will be stopped from going to the school. So this literally affects the literacy rate of the girls' education. Okay. Suppose if you are able to provide the water, if you are able to provide the pure drinking water, a supply of the pure drinking water to a village, and automatically, for instance, the amount which we put, or the pressure which we put on the girls' labor or the women's labor within the household, which would come down, and then on the other hand, actually they will be able to go to the education or the schooling. On the other hand, along with this one, for instance, the rise in income level. The rise in income level of the household. Automatically, when there is a rise in income level of the household, that means there is a lot of an awareness which is happening. And when there is an awareness about the girl's education, and it transforms the entire family life. So, it is not just our intention is to provide the technology, or the intention is to supply the water, but at the same time, in supplying the water, or in providing the water, pure drinking water, how many things are coming up? Once girls' education, income rise, the labor, all these things, when you are able to understand, that means you are clearly understanding the life-world experience of an individual or your respondent. Okay, then the very idea of which you have within your mind, that introducing the technology or introducing the technological program or new innovative practice, makes more meanings, more sense for the villagers. That means the very idea is that whatever the technological ideas you have it in your mind, it should make sense to the village community itself. That means it should create meaning for them. Unless it creates a meaning for them, then the technological adoptions or the technologies which you are trying to introduce, which will be a meaningless object. So that's what the very idea of the qualitative methods. Okay, the very idea of this is just exploring how one is supposed to engage with the life world. Okay. The next is that when you do this exercise, what is happening here is that from this example, that means your object of the study is water. The object of the study is the pure drinking water, but how the water is connected to, for instance, education, labor, income. These all are different aspects. These are different aspects of your object of your study, but these are highly connected. That's why we don't understand the object of the study in a discrete way. No to the discrete understanding. Okay, no. Rather, our focus is about the totality of the system we are trying to look at it. Always the qualitative method which would focus on the totality of the system, focusing on the totality of the system, rather than trying to understand like a kind of a discrete entities. Income separately, education separately, and the labor separately. For instance, in the quantitative methods, we try to, in the survey method, okay, what is the very flaw with the survey method is that we try to understand the education or income or labor as a kind of a discrete entities, and finally we would like to club it all together. But in the process of clubbing it, and we are not able to bring or produce the same experience of your respondent. Okay, when you fail to produce the same experience of your respondent, that means we are not, as a researcher, we are not able to explain for instance, the emotional content of the life, or a kind of the same experience of your respondent's life is. So this is one way to, like, a kind of trying to address the flaw of the quantitative methods. Okay, so on the other hand, the next thing is that whose knowledge counts. Whose knowledge counts? Because as a researcher, you are also participating. As a researcher, you are also trying to participate in the community life. As a researcher, you are trying to participate in the community life, like your respondents. So there is a connection between the researcher and the respondent. Okay, so whose knowledge counts? And ultimately, keep this in mind that it's the respondent's knowledge counts. Whatever you are trying to experience, whatever you are trying to explain, okay, or whatever you want to describe, okay, it's all about respondent's life world. Even though you are the researcher, you are being part of that community. You are participating in the community or events and everything you are trying to do, but still you are only trying to explain the respondent's point of view. That means you should keep your personal dilemmas, or you should keep your emotional attachments and all sort of a kind of, and you might be explaining that no, this is not good, this is not right. That's not none of our business. What is right, what is good. We are not going to comment on this. Okay, well, we are not going to take any kind of the moral standards of the life of your respondent. We are only going to describe what is the respondent's life world is all about. We are not going to take a kind of the moral standard. Okay, whatever the respondent has done, that's right. Whatever the respondent has done, that's wrong. We are not going to take those moral stand. Okay, we are only describing what the respondent is trying to do within the field or within the given situation. Okay, so in that sense, the researcher limits his influence on the research subject, on the respondent. So this is purely, you have to keep this idea. purely, we should keep this in mind. Okay, from here only, like we will be understanding what are the different methods of the qualitative research. Basically, when you say the qualitative method, is that what comes to your mind is that what comes to our mind is that it's an ethnographic method. Ethnographic method. It's a traditional anthropological method. Okay, which the sociologists like us, we also try to use the ethnographic method. Normally, the ethnographic method, which means it's the study of culture or cultures. So normally one culture you are trying to understand, maybe a kind of a different set of cultures you are trying to understand. So here the question is that what is culture? What is culture? Culture is just an explanation, way of life. It's a way of life. So how the life is structured, how the life is constructed. The life is constructed with normally two things. One is it's full of material objects you will be able to see in and around you. In and around you, you will be able to see all the technologies in it, maybe board or camera or a kind of a fan, or TV, all set of material objects you will be having. On the other hand, the life is also part of the non-material things. For instance, the non-material things in terms of one very good example how to understand the non-material thing is that it's your behavior. How do you behave in a particular situation? Okay, so the behavior denotes your, for instance, it's your habit. It's a kind of an everyday habit. But now the question is that you are trying to understand how this behavior is structured. How the behavior is structured. Why an individual repeatedly do certain acts in a given situation. Okay, so that's a behavioral question. That means when you are asking the behavioral question, as we have said very clearly that it's about the thought and it's about the act. The thought and act are always being part of the behavior. When you are able to understand the thought and behaviors, okay, if you want to understand the individual behaviors, and behind this, the thought and the act, there are multiple factors. There are multiple factors which structures the thought and action of an individual, okay, or the behavior of an individual. It may be, for instance, in certain aspect, it may be a kind of a religion. For instance, different religion practices different things. Okay, for instance, the practices which varies from Hindus to Muslims to, for instance, Christians, they have a different set of practices. At the same time, even for instance, within Hindus, you can also look at in terms of the caste practices. Different caste practices, different things. At the same time, it also class matters. Okay, religion, caste, class, for instance, ideology. Okay, these all are some of the variables. Different set of variables which would like to influence the behavior. Okay, when it's influencing the behavior, this behavior alters the material object. Okay, the connections which you want to establish, or the connections, or you want to understand the way of life. The way of life, even maybe, for instance, in your case, in your project, okay, it may be a kind of the relationship between the technology and the cultural understanding, okay, the technology with the way of life. So you are basically trying to understand the behavior of an individual with the material objects. Okay, so this is purely in terms of an understanding what is the culture of that societies, or what is the culture of that particular group is. So you may be having, for instance, in terms of an behavior, you may be having a kind of an understanding the attitude of an individuals. This all are part of the ethnographic study. So when you say that ethnographic study, how we are going to understand this? We are going to understand this as a participant observer. So always the participant observer which comes to that. That means you be part of the village community, you participate whatever the group is trying to do, you also become a part of it, and you are trying to do whatever they are trying to do and learn and study them thoroughly, and then to come up with the knowledge. Okay, come up with the knowledge. That's why normally this ethnographic method follows the inductive process. That means from the experience, we just move on to the theory building. So here the experience is the respondent's life world. And the theory building is like normally within sociology we try to build a kind of the theory of the car, theory of the communities, okay, or even for instance in certain cases the theory of understanding the scientific laboratory practices. We have certain the theories, okay, certain understanding or a certain kind of building blocks behind understanding the culture. Okay, here the small clarifications from what is ethnographic towards what is a kind of an ethnomethodologies. Ethnomethodology is purely a kind of the sociological method. That means ethno-people method is a kind of a tool or an instrument of a study. Okay, logy is about the study. So ethnomethodology is attempt to understand always it's kind of how the individual or how the actor construct the social reality. So here always in this method, always the researcher maintains, the researcher is not going to be part of the respondent's life work, rather always he maintains, he will be a kind of an observer, just mere an observer, not a participant. Okay, so he will be like trying to observe, okay, how the actors or how the individuals within a given situations, how they are constructing the social reality of a particular situation. Okay, through what mechanisms or through what processes they try to construct the social reality. Okay, so these are some of the methods which we normally the sociologists used to follow within the field to collect the data. Okay, the next is that the very idea is that I just try to make you to explain the very idea of what is this the qualitative method is, and then what is ethnographic the study is all about. Okay, within ethnographic method we predominantly follow the participant observation. So within the ethnographic study, one of the method which we follow is that one of the way of data collection is that it's a participant observation. The second one is that in-depth interview or intense interview, and then the focus group. Normally the participant observation is that the respondent, okay, normally we will be like mixing all these things, we will be like using all these three methods to understand the culture or to understand the life world, to understand the social life. Maybe one way of doing is that as a researcher, as I've said, as a researcher we become part of the community, we participate in it, and we live like a kind of villagers. So it's purely a participating way. So rather in certain cases, if you're not able to do that, what we do here is that we take a kind of an in-depth interview on a particular specific subject. Suppose if you are understanding, bringing certain transformation in the agricultural practices. You want to bring certain change in the agricultural practices, moving from kind of an inorganic farming to an organic farming you want to produce. So you're not able to participate as a kind of a farmer. Rather, what you are trying to do is that you are trying to do a kind of an in-depth interview, taking an in-depth interview. What stops the organic farming? What is making the farmers not to adopt the organic farming methods? Rather, they are like more majority of them involved in inorganic farming. So you have a kind of a different set of reasoning. You have different in-depth interviews. You are trying to compare with the farmers who are doing organic farming, the farmers who are doing inorganic farming. So you have kind of a different set of knowledge, and you finally arrive at certain specific reasons. At the same time, you are also trying to use the focus group interviews. The focus group interviews will be, for instance, you bring multiple group of people. Okay, bringing multiple group of people, for instance, you can bring the people from an agricultural university, that means purely trying to bring the scientists, or you are trying to bring, for instance, the local communities, the local farmers who are trying to practicing organic as well as inorganic, and then also the state representatives, state officers, and the consumer bodies, and as well as for instance, the traders. So you bring a different set of people, and then you have a kind of the common discussion. Okay, so you are able to follow, take in-depth interview or the focus group discussion, where we are not able to participate ourselves, where we are not able to become part of the community. Okay, in that case, what is good here is that, okay, we just take a kind of an in-depth interview as well as the focus group. Suppose if there is a situation which is allowing you to become a kind of a participant observation, you want to bring a kind of a transformation in agricultural practices. In the process, what you do is that you become a kind of a farmer. Become a farmer and understand their pain, their loss, or kind of they're overcoming the hurdles in terms of a market. Every aspects you are trying to understand. So this is very, for instance, very few people would like to adopt this method of collecting the data. Rather, the majority of them, they will be into the, for instance, in-depth interview as well as the focus group. Okay. Now the question is that after having this different set of a method, and we have to know how to enter the field. First, how to enter the field. This is number one. Number two is that how to maintain the relations. How to maintain the relations. Third is that how to select the sample, selection of the samples. Or selection of the events. Well, the fourth idea would be, for instance, taking notes. Okay, this is the fourth the major things which we would like to see. For instance, entering the field. How to enter the field within the qualitative methods is that either you follow the formal methods or an informal. For instance, the formal methods are you want to go and do a kind of the village survey. So you want to do a kind of the study within a village. Either formal way is that you just approach the DC. okay, the deputy commissioner of any district, and then the deputy commissioner will tell or kind of give instructions to the subordinates. For instance, in the case of an DDPO, district development officers, and along with the district development officers, then it comes down to the BDO, okay, and then from the BDO it moves to the sarpanch, the local sarpanch. So that means in a formal way you follow the hierarchy of the order. That means from the top to the bottom. Top to the bottom. You directly go to a kind of an organization and then you take the permission of conducting the survey or conducting the study, and then you move down to the bottom where you want to actually understand a certain object. Okay, so you are directly moving to the bottom. So this is more a kind of informal. That's you have to write letters, the specific letters, forwarding letters from the institutions. So you specifically, for instance, the way, for instance, for my PhD thesis, I try to follow both as well as informal as well as the formal mechanism. Okay, what is that? The formal mechanism I try to follow in, for instance, interviewing scientists within CSIR laboratories. Okay, so you cannot go to the CSIR laboratory and you cannot go to an individual scientist and then you cannot take an interviews just like that. You have to follow a kind of a very formal mechanism. The letter has to go to the consent table, and then the consent table will be forwarding to the respective director's respective head, and the respective head will give a kind of a forwarding, and it comes to the individual scientist, and we take those forwarding letters, and then we will be able to go to each scientist and make them a kind of an interview. This is one way of informal. For instance, we can also try to follow an informal entry into the field. The informal entry into the field, which will happen through a kind of networks or relations. A kind of networks relations, which primarily through friends or more a kind of a professional relations. Friends as well as the professional who know much better about the concerned respondent. So they will be able to introduce you, and you can go to them and talk to them. Normally, for instance, I want to understand, kind of the relations between the technology and the life world. How, especially how SPV technology helps in the better life of tribal communities. Life world of a tribal community. So this for this particular understanding, I try to follow the informal networks. For instance, I try to come to know about certain villages, certain tribal hamlets through one of my friends, and then I followed actually different set of networks, like friends to a kind of a link to another friend. So it went a kind of a snowball kind of thing. Okay, it's a kind of a snowball. So it's moving from one to another one, getting the knowledge or getting the kind of insights, and finally I reached the tribal hamlet to understand this. So either you follow that entry into the field, either through the formal mechanism or through an informal mechanism. At the same time, how to maintain the relations. For instance, the field is not something which is a kind of the field is not something which is related to one person or a kind of one actor. It's not in one actor alone. The field is multiple sites normally. Always it will be a kind of multiple sites. Always it will be a kind of participation of the multiple sites and the multiple respondents from different set of situations. Okay. For instance, in the case of suppose if your idea is that to understand the organic farming, so you are trying to bring multiple people. For instance, the consumer, traders, you are trying to bring traders, you are trying to bring farmers, scientists. So too many people you have to bring. So you have to maintain the relations with all the people equally. Okay, because the maintaining the relation is that it also gives you a kind of an insights, in-depth insights into the knowledge world. suppose if you miss to if you miss to like understand a consumer, or even for instance if you miss to take the point of view of the scientist in organic farming, that means you fail. You miserably fail in understanding the transformation which you want to produce, you want to see. So the maintaining the relations is a must. The first idea is that how to enter into the field, at the same time how to maintain the relations with a different set of an actor as per your object of the study. And the third is that the selection of the sample. Normally the selection of the sample is based on the theoretical sampling. This is what normally they used to follow. Normally we used to follow the theoretical sampling. The theoretical sampling follows the exploratory. Theoretical sampling is always it's being part of an exploratory in nature. The exploratory is that you don't know you don't have any idea about the field, or you don't have any idea about the life world experiences. This is the first time you are trying to understand. So it's an exploratory. At the same time, the sample selection is based on who will be able to give an adequate knowledge for your object of the study. So the sampling is based on those respondents who will be able to provide you the necessary information. So suppose if you are approaching the respondent, okay, who is not in a position to give necessary information for your study, that means it fails. So the theoretical sampling is always, it depends on the people or the respondents who will be able to provide the necessary information. So the theoretical sampling you will be using. At the same time, you are also supposed to pick up the events. So for instance, picking up of the events is that which event you want to understand. For instance, in my case, especially for my PhD thesis, I used to attend all the seminars, conferences, workshops,